If you want to take your business from $0 to $1 million, there is a common journey that you'll go on. I see this all the time as an accountant working with various small business owners. They go on this same journey across these 5 stages of business ownership. The first one is the big dream phase. This is when you first come up with your idea of your business and you first get started. You're super excited in this phase because you go, I'm going to become a business owner. I'm going to own my own business. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to provide for my family. I'm going to have flexibility. All of this, you've got these grand ideas and you're starting to implement them. You're starting to get started. You get your first customers. You have your first expenses. You've got that business bank account set up. All is swell in the world because you're becoming a business owner. At this stage, you are very optimistic. You're going, I've got these grand plans of where this is going to get to. There might be some nerves in this phase because maybe you don't really know how it's all going to play out. Maybe you've never done this before. Maybe you don't know if you're actually going to make profit. But you're mainly guided by this idea that you're going to become wealthy through this business. This business is going to provide what you need for it. So you get started, you've got this optimistic approach, but you're still very excited about this business venture. You quickly move on from this big dream phase into the second phase, and that is the job phase. You've got a business, but you've worked out you actually really just have a job. You've gone from working from someone else to still working a job. It's just that the boss is yourself. So that might come with some great things like a bit of flexibility, but it also comes with a lot more responsibilities. And all of a sudden, you've got this job, you're putting these hours in, but do you really have a business? Now, when you're in this phase, a great way to look is that if you walk away from that business, you take a week of holidays, does anything actually happen? Well, the answer is probably no. If it's just you, then you are the only person bringing things into this business. You're the only one processing things within the business. If you're not there, a customer query doesn't get answered, a product doesn't get shipped out. You are the business, but therefore the business is also a job because it is 100% reliant on you. Businesses in this phase typically have a lot of time that's being put into them. The owners are having to work a lot of hours, potentially more hours than what they were working when they were working an actual job. Something I love to do with clients in this phase is to go, how many hours are you actually putting in? How much profit are you actually taking out? And what is your actual hourly rate? How does this compare to if you would go work another job and maybe not have the same stress? As long as you're building in this phase to get to these next phases of ownership, then all can be good. But if you're not going any further along, you're stuck at this job phase and you have no plan on how you're going to get to the next phase, and your hourly rate is worse than what it would have been if you're working another job, you might want to reconsider this business or re-pivot within the business to be able to get it to move on to these next phases. One of the biggest issues when you're in the job phase is the business has no value if you were trying to sell it. And that is because if you are removed as the owner, even though you've put a lot of work into it, the business might be worth nothing because maybe that business doesn't operate at all. Or maybe it requires someone to work 50 hours a week just for it to make $50,000 profit. So someone couldn't buy it, put a manager in and make any profits. They might actually be making a loss. So your business, even though you think it's valuable, might have no real world value if you're trying to sell the business. Now, before I get on to the third phase of business ownership, I would love for you to subscribe to my email newsletter. The link is in the description of this video, and I'm dropping business and tax related tips every single week to you guys for free. Now let's move back into phase number 3, which this is the team phase. Typically, when you're in that job phase, you get to the point where you're like, I can't handle any more work. The business is growing and I need someone to come in and help me. And this is when you start to build a team. You make your first or your second or your third hire. You're starting to build out a business that is beyond just you. Now, this could be someone in an administration role. It might be someone doing some bookkeeping work for you. Or maybe it's someone providing technical support. Maybe you're an accountant, you hire a bookkeeper or an accountant to work for you. Or maybe you're running a retail store and you hire a customer service person that's going to be able to serve customers for you. Whatever it is, you're expanding the business. And this is typically an exciting phase, but also quite a scary phase for business owners because all of a sudden you're taking on new responsibilities that you've never had before. All of a sudden you've got to manage people, you've got to manage payroll, you've got extra expenses. You've got this issue where now all of a sudden your customers or your clients aren't dealing with you, they're dealing with someone else. How do you replicate your knowledge and your processes to someone else? And this is a really interesting phase of business ownership because I think it's the real biggest challenge people have of one, knowing when to actually make that jump and make that first hire. And also to know how are they going to be able to take their knowledge and systemize and process that and be able to have someone else do that. If you look how big businesses are run, they're able to do this process so well. You look at a store like McDonald's, They could have this run by a 20-year-old who's managing the store because they've got such good systems and processes. They can hire 14-year-olds that can come in and read the procedure book and implement that and provide a good level of service to their customers. And this is what you need to start considering when you're in this team phase. How are you going to be able to roll out your knowledge to other people and allow them to implement that successfully within your business? This phase is also challenging from a profit point of view because you might actually have to take a step backwards. You might be making a profit that you're comfortable with as a sole person within your business, but when you make that first hire, this is an additional cost. And maybe this person isn't actually productive at all in the early days because you got to train them and they're still getting used to how your business operates. And your profits actually might take a step backwards during this phase. So this can be a real challenging phase to work out how can you have extra people within the business and be profitable in the long term. Then we hit the fourth phase, and this is the most interesting phase of business, and I call it the turning point. Are you going to progress from this phase here to the final stage of business, or are you going backwards? So this is when you're in that team phase and now you've got to make the decision. Are you going to move forward, or is running a team not really for you? How are you going to progress beyond just a small team into a larger team? This is definitely questions people start asking themselves, and I find it goes one of two ways. The people that have got a really good, fundamentally sound business can move forward to the next phase of business ownership. Those that struggle might actually look at their numbers and go, you know what, I'm making less profit now with a team of 5 than I was when it was just me. And they decide to go backwards and they go back to that job phase where it's just them. So this turning point phase is the most important to be able to get past because you need to make sure you've got the fundamentals. By this stage, you need to now start to think about your systems and processes, how you're going about managing people, how many people you actually need, what's the growth plan of the business, how are you retaining customers. You need to be thinking about all these business principles to make sure that you're going the right way on this turning point and you're not turning backwards. But if you can get all that right, you move into phase number 5 of business ownership, which is what I call the actual business. You've actually now got a business because this business has progressed. It's not just you. It's not just a small team that's trying to implement what you're saying. It's now a business that runs on its own systems and processes. The business has become more than just the time and the people that are putting into it. It now has its own IP, its own media, its own processes, and it's been able to be done in a way that's producing consistent results for your clients, or it's got good products that you're able to replicate on an ongoing basis. You've now got a business that's relying on its products and its procedures more than its people. The people are obviously key to running this business, but they're not necessarily what has the value. It's the business that has been built up over time. If we look at the biggest businesses of the world, we look at an Apple, they've built up goodwill over time. They've built up a product that people want. And it's not necessarily about the people doing it anymore. It's because this business has built up a philosophy. And this will drag people in because team members will want to come work there because they can create an attractive place to work that pays well, provides good work-life balance, or whatever needs are met by the people. At the same time, you're managing your customer expectations and you're exceeding on them. You're delivering what you said you were going to do in a systemized and procedurally based process that allows you to do this on a larger scale. And the key to all of this, your profits are growing as well. As the business is growing, it's growing profits as well, not just growing expenses. I've seen a lot of people that are in that turning point phase and they go backwards because they see that the business revenue has grown but profits haven't. Once we get to this 5th phase, we start to see that as revenue is growing, we're seeing profits grow as well. And the owner is now having more flexibility. Maybe they're not working as many hours, or maybe they're just focusing on the tasks that bring in the most reward. They've got this true flexibility. They've moved well beyond it just being a job. And now they can make the decision, do they continue to reap this? Do they continue to enjoy the profits and continue to grow this business? Or are they going to prep this business for an exit, where they're going to sell the business and enjoy the capital influx that that brings? Unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't get to this phase. In this upcoming video, I talk about why most businesses fail, and I'll give you a hint. It's a lot to do with the planning phase and the ideation of the business. I'd love for you to go check that one out, and I appreciate you watching this one.